Exactly what happens in Toronto West, so I'm not offended at all. I'm not offended at all. I know how it works. It's okay.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. This back. I think having been rejuvenated by lunch and a springtime themed extra, we cleaned up extra fast. I think we can get started a few minutes early here. So Uncle or Brother Mark is still with us, and as we mentioned, his lecture topic is on the screen. It's Into All the World, a journey retracing the spreading of the gospel in Greece. So before we call up Mark again, we're going to sing together from hymn number 362, And after that, Brother Ben's going to open our afternoon together in prayer. Hymn 362, Come Labor On. Who dares stand idle on the harvest plain while all around them waves the golden grain? Hymn 362.
Our loving Father, we thank you for blessing us today with this time that we can study your word. Help us to focus and to absorb the information and to be encouraged in our walk before you. Please help us to honour you in all our actions, and most of all, help us to leave here energized to show your love to the world around us. We pray all this asking for your Son's soon return, and we pray in his name. Amen.
All right, so once again, we'll ask for everyone's attention as we call up our brother Mark.
All right, this is always the toughest class of the afternoon, right? After you had a huge meal, not hot meal and everything like that, and people falling asleep. So if you snore, just try to keep it down a little bit. All right, so I thought we'd do something a little lighter and take you through what I did on my summer vacation, like they make you do when you get back from school. Actually, about almost exactly a year ago, I went on a trip of a lifetime, and one of those what they call bucket list trips, and I got to do it with one of my best friends, the Apostle Stephen. There's Brother Stavros, and I went with my brother-in-law, Steve, and we went to Greece for the Greek Bible School. For those who have had the opportunity to come to Toronto West over the years, you might recognize that we have online. We have an ecclesia, the only ecclesia in Greece who joins us, and they've been joining us for about 15 years. And Brother Steve, who speaks Greek, will give a little Greek exhortation every Sunday he's there. And it's for our brothers and sisters online, and they've been with us for 15, almost 20 years. They recognize our kids as they grew up. Jacob gave his first exhortation, and they're like, "Oh, that's Jacob," and they were messaging, "That's Jacob," because they knew they grew up with our family, right? And so I'm gonna introduce you to the Greek Ecclesia, and do a little bit of a sales job. Every 2 years, we'll hold a Greek Bible School. It's over a long weekend, and you might want to take a trip over there, if you are thinking about a wonderful opportunity to go on vacation. It's fantastic. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to take you very quickly through about 2.5 weeks of my time there, and just focus on some of those things. And for me, I'm a very visual person, as some of you I know would be, and there were places where I got very emotional because you're standing not in a place that you think Paul would have been. You know he was there. Like, and I'll show you some spots where you know that he was there. He had to have walked because it's the only place it could have been. And so we'll talk about a little bit about that. All right. So to give you a bit of, we did have Brother Steve and I planned this together. And so we anchored the Bible school at the end of our trip. And so our trip was broken up into the focus of our trip was broken up specifically. So first of all, the Greek Bible School. It was the weekend of March 7th through 10th. It was over a long weekend. We were in a hotel, all of us together. We all rented rooms together. We rented a room in the hotel, and then we went out and ate lunch and dinner together every meal. And it was just absolutely extraordinary. So it was led by Brother Con Mitsos. Many of you would probably know Brother Con from Australia. He is Greek. He speaks Greek. He grew up speaking Greek. He's a little rusty in Greek to his own admission, but he gave the Bible school in Greek for the brothers and sisters because it's primarily for them. And then there was a brother in the back who would translate for us English speakers and as well. But it was just a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. So I'll show you Brother Con in a moment. The second part of our trip was focused on sites that we visited in the second missionary journey of the Apostle Paul. So when Steve and I were planning the trip, we got out Acts and we were like, everywhere that Paul and Silas went, we're going. And, it doesn't matter where, if it's referenced there, we're going to go there. So I'm going to show you pretty much each of the steps that he went. We're going to skip Amphipolis and Apollonia because he actually traveled through there. We did go there. They make great coffee in Apollina, by the way. But we'll talk a little bit about those that as well. We would also visit relevant sites, adding contextual history to the Bible, and then there was other sites that we would see as well outside of the biblical reference. All right, for those who know, there's Brother Con in the back. He would do English and Greek, but he did the class in Greek. And there's the Bible school, the group together. It was a smaller group this time. This is the first time outside of COVID we've had the school. So they've had it every 2 years up until the school for about 3 or 4 times. Then COVID hit, and it's been about 3, almost 4 years since we were able to get the school back and running. So it's now running. So there are English brothers and sisters there. There is Australian, North American, and then the Greek brothers and sisters as well. And so, Brother Con, the Mitsos, there's Brother George and Sister Ruth Mitsos as well, relatives of Brother Con and Sister Sue. They were there as well. And there's the brother in the light blue shirt is the CBM, Brother James. He's the CBM link for Greece as well. So what we would do is we just paid one amount, and one of the brethren who helped organize this, he would go to restaurants because it's the off season and there's just nobody around. So he would go into restaurants and say, look, I'm going to bring 20 people to the restaurant. They're like, oh, that's fantastic. And so nobody would order. He would just order, and you just put plates on and you try all sorts of different things, every meal like that. It was just, we were absolutely stuffed. So I'd say we flew economy and back home freight. Is what so I FedExed myself back home by the time I left. The plane could barely get off the ground. But as you can see, we would just share things. And the last meal, we were just like, okay, please cut the amount of food in half because everybody was just like staggering. It was just so much food. But it was fantastic. You'd have these meals together. So it was really, really great. Very cost effective. In the off season in Greece, things are at least a quarter of the price. So to give you a perspective, Brother Steve and I rented a car for 10 days, 135 Canadian. For 10 days to rent the car. The gas costs more than the rental of the car in euros, right? So it's very inexpensive. A hotel, 60 Canadian a night. Fantastic. A hotel that would be 300 euros in the on season. Off season, there's nobody in there. So you can get very cost effective. So if you're looking for a fairly cost effective trip, and you want to go, it's very cost effective. So there you go. I don't have any shares in any travel agencies. All right. So I'm going to give you just a quick synopsis of the Greek brothers and sisters that are there. So the yaya, the grandma is Sister Chrysula on the far left. Sister Chrysula, her husband in the 50s. Her husband came in contact with the CBM, came into the truth, and Sister Chrysula and her husband were both in the truth. Sister Yana in the black, so 2 over, that's Sister Yana. She is the Lydia of Greece, right? It's her and her children. So Brother Tanasi in the middle there, and Brother Satiri here. Those are her sons. And then we didn't have them all in the same picture. And Sister Yana's husband, Brother Dimitri is her other son, and Brother Panioti is the older gentleman there. That's the Greek brothers and sisters, and they join us online every Sunday. And there's on occasion they have to go and visit family, but religiously they are there online with us every single week. And then there's Brother Steve and Sister Chrysula over here, and this is we took the photograph. Does anybody have any idea what the mountain is in the background? There's a very famous mountain in Greece. What's that? No, that's in Italy. Yeah, that's the boot. That's the mountain of the gods, Mount Olympus, right behind us. Right, we had lunch in the shadow of Mount Olympus one day. So it was a great thing. The temperature was around 15 degrees Celsius. You can live with that in February when it's minus 300 degrees in Canada. So it wasn't too bad. All right. So where did we go? Where did I go? So first of all, Brother Steve has to, when you go to Greece, he has to visit his family. That's the Greek way. So he had to go north. So he landed in Thessaloniki up in the north. So I flew into Athens to begin with. I went to Athens. I spent a couple of days in Athens myself. I drove out to Corinth. I spent some time in Corinth, and then I drove back, and then I flew up to him in Thessaloniki in the north, right? And that's where Steve and I went off together. In the middle circle there is Larissa. Larissa is where the brothers and sisters live, right in the middle, in Larissa, Greece. It's a small little town. It's not a village, it's a town. Probably maybe actually the size a little bit bigger than Cambridge, right? That's pretty much the size of Larissa, but on right, not far from the coast there. So that's where the Bible school actually was. All right. So did I skip something? Oh, there we go. All right. So in the second missionary of the Apostle Paul had no intentions of going to Greece, no intentions whatsoever. If you look at the Acts, what his intention was is he took Silas, and what they were going to do is they were going to go and strengthen the brothers and sisters in Galatia, where they had already been, where they'd gone on the first missionary journey, right? So that's where they were going to go, and that's where they were going to strengthen. There's no mention, no indication that they had any intention of going to Greece at that time. And so they're going there, and the Lord Jesus Christ came and basically forced them and said, no. I don't want you going there. I want you to go over to Greece. And there's that very famous passage in Acts 16 that they come over to Macedonia and help us. And Macedonia is in Greece, right? It's in the area of Philippi. And you recognize that Alexander the Great was from the area of the region of Macedon. Now there is a country called Macedonia. And don't ever get a Greek people talking about who owned Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great was a Macedonian. Philip, his father, was Philip of Macedon. So he was truly Greek. So there's this debate in Greece as to where he actually came from. Okay, so the first area that we're going to do, and I'm going to move very quickly because we just want to get to some pictures and some slides. So the first area that we want in Acts, it talks about the Apostle Paul landed at Neapolis. He went to Philippi. He went through Amphipolis, Apollonia. He went to Berea or Varia. The B in Greek is a V. Varia, went to Thessaloniki, and then we would go a little bit further down. So that's kind of where our first part of our journey is actually going to be. So he started there in Neapolis. And Neapolis today is a little town, a beautiful town called Kavala. And so I'll show you. Kavala they call it the Blue Town. And so we arrived there in the evening, and this is where we had dinner on the coast of, and this is in Neapolis. Now, the Apostle Paul and Silas, when they arrived there, they only went through Neapolis. It doesn't say they started an ecclesia there. There may have been brothers and sisters there along the way, but it just says that they actually landed. So there, when Paul and Silas traveled from Turkey and they took a boat, they landed at Neapolis, and that was their entrance into Greece. Now, this gives you a picture of what Neapolis would have looked like. And so it's not flat. It's very, very hilly country, very hilly country. So where you're looking out is into the harbor, and I'll show you another picture of that as well. This is actually from our hotel room. We were, by our hotel. And so we were looking down, and into the distance is the harbor in which the Apostle Paul and Silas would have landed. So I'm going to see if this actually works. Sometimes this is a video. So this is our hotel room, and I want you to look at the hill country and see how the hill country is very, very hilly. So this is where the Apostle Paul and Silas, Timothy and Luke all would have landed, and they began their journey. Now you'll be scanning off, and you'll look to the harbor, and we'll be looking to the harbor. That's the harbor in which the Apostle Paul would have landed. Just to give you a perspective, just a little bit of the land, very, very hilly land, and that's where they would have landed. And where we were driving. So don't worry, there was no sound. My commentary is not particularly helpful, but that's kind of just the land itself was where the apostle would have landed. And so what we're going to do is so Paul landed in Neapolis, and they were going to take the Roman roads on the way to Philippi. And the Roman road in Greece was called the Via Egnatia. And so the Via Road, Ignatius is just some diplomat who they named it after. So the Via Ignatius. And so you can see the word Neapolis there, where Paul landed, and he's going to begin his journey on the way to Philippi. And so this is so here we are. That was the picture of the harbor that I showed you, a Kavala or Neapolis. And so what we're going to be doing is the road, the Roman road, was going to actually go all the way up to the top there to Philippi. And so the pictures I'm going to show you are the remains of the Via Ignatia. And so Brother Steve and I, we drove around like crazy to try and find the Roman roads, and the Roman roads are in incredible shape. They still drive cars on the Roman roads. That's how good they are. These Roman roads are extraordinary. Our engineer brethren, like Brother Bo, will appreciate. I left a couple of pictures in here for you, Bo, just to sort of, for the engineers, these Roman engineers were extraordinary. These roads have lasted over 2,000 years, and they still drive cars on it. So people's driveways enter into these Roman roads, and they drive these cars down it. So it's incredible how durable these roads are. So that's where we're going, and that's where we're going to. Our roads are going to go. All right. So Steve and I found these Roman roads, and there's our brother Steve walking on the Roman roads, and you can see how they had the Roman roads, where they had the large rocks on the outside, and then on the inside they had the Roman roads. And what you'll notice, and you'll see it from other pictures, is the gradient on it was just enough that the water would rush off of it. So even in our roads here, it would do a terrible job, right? And so they're washed out and all that kind of. These roads don't wash out, because the way the Romans had designed the roads is they wouldn't wash out, and the water would rush off of the roads, so they wouldn't wash out. So the way that they're actually designed is extraordinary. And like I said, they still drive cars. We had to move aside, and these little cars would bomb down the roads to get to the main pavement there. So I wanted to give you perspective of these are the roads that the Apostle Paul, Silas, Timothy, and Luke would have walked on. And we know they walked on these roads. You know why we know they walked on these roads? Because it's the only road to Philippi. And I can tell you, we walked on this for about an hour, and it was so moving to walk in a spot where you knew your brethren had walked before. And one of the things that we discussed as we were walking, and this is a picture, isn't that beautiful? Of the roads that they would have had. And they would have had their backpacks or whatever it was. I don't think they would have had donkeys. They would have had backpacks and as they were walking along that road. And so you can see the beauty. And so we're looking to Kavala or Neapolis on the left-hand side. You're looking down. So you can see how steep it would have been. So it would have been a couple of day journey to Philippi, even though as the crow flies, it's maybe 20 kilometers, right? Maybe 20, 25 kilometers, but it was a very winding road on the way to Philippi. And this is for Bo. Just look at the large rocks on the side, just how incredibly strong and powerful those roads were that they had actually built. These have lasted well over 2,000 years, and they don't just drive chariots on it. Like I said, they drive cars on it today, and they still hold up. We can't go, 6 months without a pothole, destroying one of our cars, right? And so it's an incredible shape. Now, I left this slide in for you because I want you to think about that, we just finished lunch together, right? And we had an opportunity to fellowship and talk about all sorts of things. And at our table, we were talking about everything. We were talking about education, but we talked about things about the truth. We talked about all sorts of different things, right? As would have you as well. Can you think of the conversations that these four brethren would have had walking along that road? And here's a young man, Timothy, and Timothy was very young at this point. Right? Remember, Timothy was the anchor for the Ephesus Ecclesia many years later, but that's like 10 or 15 years later. So he was a very young man, probably late teens, early 20s, I'm guessing, okay? And so here he is, he's walking. Look at who he's walking with. First of all, the Apostle Paul, not only was he a Pharisee, so he had this incredible knowledge, but he was also a tradesman as well. Right? Rough tradesman. And just the conversations that he would have had as they were walking along the way, the exhortations that they would have had as they walked along the way. What you might not know is Silas was no shrink either, right? He was an incredible apostle. And look who he had spent time with. The Acts tells us that he had originally partnered with Justus or Barabbas, right? Not Barabbas, Barsabas. Justus and Barsabas. And if you look at who he was, Justus was in the running to become one of the 12 apostles when Judas had fallen. So Silas had partnered in his missionary journey with one of the most extraordinary apostles as well. And it talks about that Silas was an incredible elder in the meeting anyway. So just the knowledge and the stories that he would have had as well. And Justus, it talks about the qualifications for Barsabas was that he had to have been there at the beginning of the ministry of Christ, followed him through the full ministry, and seen him at the resurrection. So just think of the conversations that would have taken place with that. And then we have Luke, the beloved physician. And you think about the Apostle Paul, he was in rough shape. He had been beaten to a pulp. And so he had his own physician on tap. So Luke was walking along, and think of the medical discussions that they could have had, the things that Luke would have seen, okay? And here's Timothy just wide-eyed walking with these brethren up the street. And they didn't have iPods, and they weren't listening to music on the way up. They were talking. And remember, they had no plans to come to Greece. So they were planning on the way. I'll say, I need you to go to Greece, get moving. And so they were planning as they were walking together. So can you imagine the conversations that would have taken place on that road? And that's what Steve and I, as we were going along, we were thinking about, what were they talking about? Sure, they were probably talking about the Bible, but they probably weren't talking about the Bible all the time. Just think of the life experiences that would have happened there, and that Timothy would have absorbed like a sponge some of the things that were going on there. So anyway, so some of those interesting things. All right, so who was the first convert, not just the first sister, the first convert in Greece that we know of was a sister, Sister Lydia. And following the date from Neapolis and from there to Philippi, which is the leading district of Macedonia, on the Sabbath day, we went outside the gates of Philippi to the riverside where we supposed that there was a place of prayer. And we sat down and spoke to the women that were there. And one who heard us was a woman by the name of Lydia in the city of Thyatira. And so before we go to Philippi, he did go to Philippi first. We'll come back to Philippi in a moment, but I want to take you to Lydia. It's a little town just outside the city gates called Lydia. So this is a river, and I'll show you some other pictures, and you can actually see Philippi in the distance. So this was the river in which the Apostle Paul met Lydia. And you're thinking, Brother Mark, how do you know that was the river that they met? Because it's the only river outside of Philippi. It's the only river. So it's in stone's throw. It's less than a kilometer away from Philippi. So Lydia was here. Now there's a little temple. You'll see a little church and everything like that. But they very tastefully done. Unlike in Israel, where they have this massive shrine everywhere where they think somebody might have stepped. In Greece, it's a little bit more reserved. They still have a church pretty much everywhere. But here is a place, and we were able to dip our hands in this beautiful river. And this is this hill is the Acropolis, and I'll show you another picture of what the city of Philippi would have looked like. I want you to keep that hill in mind. That is at the base of that hill is the city of Philippi. Okay, so that's how close we are to the city of Philippi. So this is the area, a little town they call Lydia. It's not really a town, it's more like a village. There isn't a stoplight or anything there. So it's just a tiny, tiny town of Lydia. So I'll show you a picture of that. So this is Lydia. This is the river. This is the river that Lydia would have been baptized in, and her family, because it's the only river near Philippi. And so somewhere along in this area, I don't know how deep, it's not that particularly that deep, but it's very tranquil, very quiet, quite a lovely spot. We were able to dip our hands in the water there just and then of course, we always have a church, right? There's a church there, but that's the area of Lydia. And so that's where Lydia and her family came into the truth. The very first convert to the truth was a dominant sister and her family. Ironically, what is the Ecclesia in Greece now? Sister Yana and her sons and her family. So the first Ecclesia was founded by a sister and her family. The last Ecclesia in Greece, Christ remains away, was Sister Yana and her 3 sons who were in the truth, right? And Brother Paniotti. But it's Sister Yana, don't get me wrong, you'll find out. Sister Yana is the powerhouse there, yeah? The Yaya, as she's called, right? So Sister, so there's a beauty in that as well. All right, let's go to Philippi. Remember that hill that I showed you? This is an artist's rendition of the city of Philippi. And so cities were typically built around where they have the Acropolis. They call these hills Acropolis. So the most famous Acropolis is where? In Athens, right? When you think of the Acropolis, you think of Athens, right? And then on top of that's the Parthenon. But these cities had Acropolises. So there's a place in Corinth called the Acrocorinth, the Acropolis of Corinth. They have a hill very much like this. And what they did was they built a temple up the top. They also built a place where they could run to escape should someone try to capture their city. And so that's what Philippi would have looked like. And this is what Philippi looks like today. So I remember cresting the hill, the top of the hill. We weren't allowed to go to the top there. Steve and I said, why don't we climb that? And one of the locals said, if you climb that, you'll the police will catch you and send you to prison. So we didn't want to have to make that call to Sister Liz and Sister Jane that we needed bailing out from some Greek prison. So we decided against it. We obeyed the laws. But we were tempted, actually, to try and climb it. So this is Philippi. And so in the background is the Acropolis of Philippi. Now, it talks about that this place is subject to earthquakes all the time. And remember, in the story of Paul and Silas, there was an earthquake, wasn't there? They were in prison, and it was an earthquake. And the one thing that I thought of when we were there is, I don't want to be anywhere near this place when there's an earthquake, because that's all marble. Like all that area, the city was right up against that Acropolis. And the rocks that would have started to tumble down and it would have been incredible. So all this marble, you start shaking it. I wouldn't want to be anywhere near when there was an earthquake. So they've had many, many earthquakes here. All right. In this area was the prison of where Paul would have been in prison and Silas would have been imprisoned. Not particularly what we would think of as a prison today with running water and a TV in which you could watch. This was just a simple hole in the ground. Now, is that the exact prison where Paul was in? Probably not. But that's where what we were told by the museum that was there was that is exactly where the prison always was. So was it exactly like this, exactly that exact spot where Paul and Silas were? Perhaps, perhaps not. But that's where the prison always was in Philippi. So they were almost certainly in that area. And all it is a hole in the ground. And remember in the story that they were placed in the center prison where there was no plan of escape. Okay, so they were put right in there. So it's not a particularly wonderful area. And depending on the time of year that they were actually there, it was quite cool. So it was maybe 15 degrees Celsius. So it wasn't too bad. But Greece regularly gets to 40, 42 degrees Celsius, right? So you can imagine how uncomfortable it would have been in that prison. So that's where the prison was. So where we were standing over here, the prison would have been right up against the edge of the Acropolis at Philippi. And so we're standing in the place that's called the marketplace. So in every city, there is a place called the marketplace. So in the King James, it describes it as the marketplace. In Greek, it's called the agora, the agora. And so many of you who've been to Manitoulin know they have an agora, which is a place where people come to talk about the Bible and debate. Well, every town had an agora. And so that's where Paul and Silas were dragged for judgment at that particular time. And so this is the agora, right? This is where Paul would have been dragged, and there's only a few pillars left because of the earthquakes that have taken place, and that's where Paul and Silas would have been. Okay, we are moving very, very quickly. I know it just looks like a lot of rubble, so we'll move from there. We drove our car through Amphipolis and Apollonia, which we just kind of drove through quite quickly, and we spent some time in Thessaloniki. And Thessaloniki, or Thessalonica, as people would recognize it today, and it's a beautiful, beautiful seaside town. The brothers and sisters, there's of course 2 letters to the Thessalonians, so there was quite an ecclesia there. Quite an interesting experience in Thessaloniki. Just a couple of pictures of the seaside of Thessaloniki. What was quite extraordinary about Thessaloniki was we went there, and it's the second largest town in Greece, right, next to Athens. So Athens is by far the biggest one, and then after that is Thessaloniki is the second largest. And if you remember from Acts, the situation that happened there were riots in Thessaloniki. When Paul was trying to preach there were riots. And what did we get? We got a riot. And so I want to show you that there was a riot that took place in Thessaloniki. All right. So the backstory is this. So Steve and I came to Thessaloniki. I flew up to Thessaloniki. He picked me up. We got a car, and we got our hotel room. 2 years before, there was this terrible train accident that took place in Greece. And it was effectively government negligence is the reason that this happened. And I think 30 to 50 young people died in this train accident. That's how bad it was. And because they were on their way to university down in Athens when the train and the switches didn't work, and the money that was supposed to go to fix the switches was put into the pocket of a politician. Anyway, out of that came, the inquiry had just come out as to what was going to happen, and nobody was going to be punished in the government for it. And the people in Greece just were in an uproar. They love to riot. And so in Greece, there's always a protest for something. So they shut the entire country down for a day of protest. So in Athens, people would flock to Athens in protest. And the second largest city was Thessaloniki. And they had this protest there as well. So here we are. We were going to wander around the city and see all the sights and all that kind of stuff. And there's just going to be the entire city is going to be shut down for this protest. And so that's what all these banners were. So we'd paid the money. We're going out. So we went out, and I didn't tell Sister Liz or Sister Jane. We didn't text them and tell them that we were going out into the, and my dad, who is always super cautious, is like, oh, Mark, did you know that they're having a day of protests? And I didn't respond to my dad either, that we were going to go out. And so we went out, and we asked the hotel owner. We said, look, what's it going to be like? Is it going to be violent? And they go, no. It's not going to be violent. It's just but there's going to be a lot of people. So we only had a couple of days, so we're not going to mess around. So we went out to see all the sites. So we were wandering around and people were climbing. That's the underground subway. They decided to climb up on top of that. So we were walking around looking at the ruins, and there were thousands, tens of thousands of people. So ironically, in Acts, when it talks about Paul and Silas, there was a riot in Thessaloniki. We got to see a riot. It was fantastic. Greeks love to protest. So this is outside of our hotel room. We're on the balcony just watching. And this went on for 4 hours. People just walking by. That's how many people there were. 4 hours of people. Hundreds of thousands of people walking, shouting and protesting. They're all good. Grandmas with their grandkids in baby carts, walking around. There was no violence. There was a couple of fools who were throwing, paintball things at windows and stuff like that. That was the most violent thing that you'd see, right? But they were wandering around and protesting. So we thought that was, unfortunately, because it shut down the city. It stifled a little bit of our trip, but it allowed us to get a flavor of what was talking about in Acts. Okay. I'm burning through Greece very quickly. All right, so some time in Athens. So if you're going to Greece, you have to go to Athens, of course. And so these are some of the pictures. Whoops, moving too quickly, man. Going too quick. Come on. There we go. Sorry, guys. Okay. So in Athens, these are pictures that I took just with my phone. And so the area of Athens, and of course the Acropolis, the most famous Acropolis in the world, is the Acropolis of Athens. And sitting on the top is the temple to Athena. It's called the Parthenon. Again, one of the world's most famous places. And it's in quite disrepair. Does anybody know why the Acropolis, the Parthenon, is in disrepair? Because somebody blew it up, actually. The Turks decided, I think it was the Turks, they decided that's a great place to store their gunpowder. And so they decided to store their gunpowder inside the Parthenon, and somebody lobbed a shell in the middle of the thing, and they blew up the entire thing. So that's why it's in ruins, not because it's just fallen apart. It's actually somebody blew it up. That's a number of years ago. Anyway, they're working on fixing it, and you have to, in order to go now, you have to book time to go up to the Acropolis, so that because thousands of course people come to see that every year, and so you have to book some time to go up it, which was fantastic. It was only maybe 12 or 13 degrees, which was fantastic. My dad, 3 years before, had went, and my dad was 82 at the time or something like that, and it was 42 degrees Celsius, and the old fool, he walked up with no problem, right? So anyway, he walked up the Acropolis in 40-degree weather, and it's all marble. So you can imagine it's just like a Betty Crocker shake and bake, right? Like it's just cooking you. It's already hot, and then you're already walking up. But Dad, he's coming to Athens. He's going to get his money's worth. So up he went. And so here's the Acropolis, the Parthenon, just to give you a sense of the size. So the dark marble is original marble. The light marble that you see is man-made marble. And so what they're doing is they're piecing it together and trying to rebuild it. And there's actually, so they're constantly in the process of trying to rebuild it. And what they do is there is a job university students do. And if you like Lego, you like playing with Lego, you guys like playing with Lego? Yeah. If you like playing with Lego, this would be a great job from a university because there's a group, they bring university students who do nothing but pick up pieces of marble and try to figure out where on that it's supposed to go. That's their entire job, is that their job is to take pieces of marble and try to figure out where it's actually supposed to go. And then they spend 6 months trying to figure it out, and then they go and place it into that spot. So if you like Lego, there's a job for you. You have a possibility of a job in the future. All right. The most famous situation in Athens. We weren't told that we know that there were brothers and sisters there. We don't have a letter to Athens or anything like that. But the one thing that we do know is that there was the place to the unknown God. Remember the name of the name of the hill? What was it called? Mars Hill, right? This is Mars Hill. And so this is Mars Hill. And now I'm taking this picture. I'm standing at the top of the Acropolis, and I'm taking this picture down here, taking the picture down of Mars Hill. So there would have been a temple on top of that at that particular time to the unknown God. It's called the Areopagus. So this is standing on the Areopagus or Mars Hill, looking up to the Parthenon and the Acropolis. That's where it was from the Acropolis, and that's looking at, oops, sorry, I'm a little jumpy here. There we go. That's what it would have looked like. So standing on the Areopagus or Mars Hill and looking in the background. And what really struck me was that it made the scriptures come alive, because where I, at Toronto West, the backdrop at Toronto West is a fake plant. We have this tree, this fake tree. That's the backdrop behind me when I'm giving an exhortation at Toronto West. The backdrop to the Apostle Paul, when he was giving his speech at Mars Hill, was the greatest temple that has ever been built by man. The Parthenon on the backdrop. And so here he is talking about the unknown God is Yahweh, and explaining to him what that God was. And the backdrop to him was this incredible temple to Athena. Probably one of the greatest temples, well, certainly by man, that has ever been made at that particular time. And that was super powerful to me of that as well. And so powerful was the speech of the Apostle Paul that there was an individual there by the name of Dionysius. And this man was Dionysius the Areopagite. Now, what was the name? It was named Mars Hill. And what was also the secondary name of Mars Hill? The Areopagus. That's the name of the temple, the Areopagus. Dionysius the Areopagite was the head of the temple of the unknown God. Paul converted him into the truth. That was our brother. So powerful was Paul's speech that he converted the one person he should have never been able to convert, was the leader of the temple of the unknown God. Dionysius the Areopagite, our brother. Isn't that incredible? And by that speech that he gave, and just the richness of that talk, he uses their own poets against them. And he shows the poets talk about these gods and this God and that God, but I'm going to show you the true one God who has created all things. He takes their own literary poets that they have statues of them all the way around, and he takes that and he says, I'm going to show you who the true God actually was. Okay. All right, we'll finish off real quick in Corinth. And so here we are. I took a car ride. I rented a car out to Corinth, and I spent a couple of days out in the area of Corinth. Again, another moving thing. It's about a 45-minute car drive. Their highways are fantastic at that time. So, and everything is in Greek, but it's also in English as well. I definitely recommend having a data plan where you can use your maps along the way. Definitely worth whatever it costs you to do that. But it's very, very simple to get out there. about a 45-minute car drive on excellent highways at that time. It would have taken several days for the Apostle Paul to move from Athens to Corinth, but this is a picture. Now, I didn't take this, as you could imagine, but this is a picture of ancient Corinth. And so modern-day Corinth is off in the distance. So on the top right, you can see some houses up in the top right at the corner, the elbow of that bay. That's modern-day Corinth, okay? Ancient Corinth was further up north up the coast. And I'll show you why they had modern-day ancient Corinth here. In fact, this town was called ancient Corinth. It was a little village, tiny little village, very touristy, but the ancient Corinth. And so this was the ancient Corinth. Modern-day Corinth was up a little bit further. There's a canal up there, and some of you may know that one of the ancient features of Corinth was that they used to take the boats out of the water, and they used to run them along train tracks to get them out to the Bay of Corinth on the other side. So they didn't have a Panama Canal at those days, so they would lift up the boats out of the water, they'd put them on some rails, and they'd run them about 5 kilometers up the coast, and then dump the boat on the other side. I don't have pictures of those here. I do have pictures of them, but we didn't have time to go through all of that. All of that would have been further up the coast, where the isthmus was the most narrow between that. So this is ancient Corinth. Backdrop is the Acrocorinth, in the north, and I did climb that. So I got to climb that, and it's definitely worthwhile if you climb it. Don't climb it in 40-degree heat, I can promise you. It took me about 3 hours to get up that, and I'd love to say that I scaled the side of that and make it sound particularly fantastic, but I went on the other side. But it's still extremely, extremely steep. And it took me, I used a full day to do it. It's definitely worth it because the sights that you can see. But what I want you to see here is, the one thing that I'm going to show you in Corinth is the most important one. And this location here is called the Vima. All right, this is some call it the Bema. This is the Vima. The Vima is the judgment seat. It's the place where people would come to speak. Right? It's a spot where you could give a lecture about whatever it is that you want. Again, every town had an agora, a marketplace, and every town had a Vima, a place where you could stand up and say your piece, right? And here, but the most famous Vima in Scripture is next to the judgment seat of Christ, which the same word is used of the judgment seat of Christ. But this was the Vima. And this is where the Apostle Paul and Sosthenes were dragged and brought in judgment. And Aquila and Priscilla, this is where Paul met Aquila and Priscilla here at the Vima. And there's a little marker on the outside of the Vima. You can barely see it here, the little marker here. And it's the Vima. And standing on top of there was, again, a very emotional moment for you, because you knew that Paul had stood there and witnessed for the hope of Israel, standing on that spot. Probably with Aquila and Priscilla standing around them, and the brothers and sisters, and witnessing. And so I got to walk on top of that, and I paused there for about 20 minutes. It was just a very emotional thing. But thinking about the Vima, the judgment seat, there would have been these pillars, this concave of where the judgment seat was. But in the background, there's the Acrocorinth, where the fort would have been up top, so that they could run for safety should they need to. We're going to end off with this. On the Vima, there was a stone that they had carved, and they decided to place that stone there. Now, this stone was put, obviously, by some Christians at some point, but I thought this was a wonderful way to end our class tonight. It's written in Greek, and it's also in English. It's 2 Corinthians chapter 4. It says this: "So we do not lose heart. Though our outer self is wasting away, our inner self is being renewed day by day." This is what is written on the stone. "For this light, momentary affliction is preparing for us an eternal weight of glory beyond all comparison, as we look not to the things that are seen, but to the things that are unseen. For the things that are seen are transient, but the things that are unseen are eternal. Thank you.
Well, once again, thanks very much, Brother Mark, for being with us today. Please bring back the love of the Cambridge Ecclesia when you're back in Toronto next week, God willing. Yeah, that was super interesting. Thanks for sharing your experiences with us. I think I speak for all of us when we say we want to go to Greece in February, but probably even more so now that we've seen all the interesting stuff that you can see over there. So we are going to close our time together with a hymn and a prayer. Brother Aiden's going to close in prayer for us after we sung from hymn 179. Lord, thy word abideth, and our footsteps guideth. Who its truth believeth, light and joy receiveth. Hymn 179.
Our Father in heaven, we come before you now, very thankful for the time we've had to spend together this Sunday morning and afternoon. We thank you for our brother Mark and the time he took to prepare these things for us. We get the opportunity to somewhat experience what he experienced in Greece and to be able to think about our past brothers and sisters who spent time there and how they would have shared your word with the people there around them. We ask you to please help us to be able to do the same where we are, and by your grace be able to meet with those brothers and sisters and to be able to share with them the experiences that we had here. We ask you to please watch over us all on our way home tonight and to keep us safe. We ask all this through your Son's name, Jesus Christ. Amen.